Hello guys, welcome to Cherson TV, and today I have a good news to you because President Rodrigo Duterte has approved the grant of the SRI to government employees for the fiscal year 2020. And that is our discussion for today, the SRI. But before we proceed with the discussion, may I ask to please subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed yet. Do click that subscribe button, and of course do click that notification bell for you to keep updated of the videos of the discussions that I will be uploading. Okay guys, so to discuss this matter, President Rodrigo Duterte approved the 10K Service Recognition Incentive, or the SRI. And to read this Administrative Order number 37 by the President of the Philippines, authorizing the grant of the Service Recognition Incentive to government employees for fiscal year 2020, whereas under Section 17 of Congress Joint Resolution number 4 dated June 17 of 2009, the President, upon recommendation of the Department of Budget and Management, is authorized to update the compensation and position classification system for civilian personnel and base pay schedule for military and uniformed personnel, as well as the policies on and levels of allowances, benefits, incentives applicable to all government personnel, whereas the DBM has recommended updating the policies on and levels of incentives applicable to all government personnel through the grant of one-time incentive to recognize and further encourage the unwavering commitment and dedication of government employees in performing their work, their continued support and collaborative efforts in the delivery of services to the public, as well as their diligence in the effective and efficient performance of their respective functions. Whereas Section 4 of Joint Resolution number 4 authorizes the grant of incentives to reward an employee's loyalty to government service and contributions to the agency's continuing viable existence. Incentives as rewards for exceeding agency financial and operational performance targets to motivate employee efforts toward higher productivity and other existing benefits to be categorized by the DBM as incentives, and whereas government employees deserve to be rewarded for their collective and unceasing participation in invaluable contribution to the administration's continuing efforts towards the establishment of streamlined government processes and more responsive delivery of public services, especially in the midst of the public health emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, therefore, I, Rodrigo Roa Duterte, President of the Republic of the Philippines, by virtue of the powers vested in me by law, do hereby order Section 1, Service Recognition Incentive for Employees in the Executive Department. This order authorizes the grant of one-time service recognition incentive at a uniform rate not exceeding 10,000 pesos for each of the following personnel in the Executive Department: A. Civilian personnel in national government agencies, including those in state universities and colleges, and government-owned or controlled corporations occupying regular contractual or casual positions, and military personnel of the Armed Forces of the Philippines under the Department of National Defense and uniformed personnel of the Philippine National Police, Bureau of Fire Protection, and Bureau of Jail Management and Penology under the Department of the Interior and Local Government, the Bureau of Corrections under the Department of Justice, the Philippine Coast Guard under the Department of Transportation, and National Mapping and Resource Information Authority under the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. And Section 2, Conditions on the grant of the SRI. The grant of the SRI shall be subject to the following conditions. A. The civilian personnel are occupying regular, contractual, or casual positions. B. The personnel are still in the government service as of November 30, 2020. And letter C. The personnel have rendered at least a total or an aggregate of 4 months of satisfactory service as of November 30, 2020, inclusive of services rendered under any of the alternative work arrangements prescribed by the Civil Service Commission. And D. Those who have rendered less than a total of an aggregate 4 months of satisfactory service as of November 30, 2020, shall be entitled to a prorated share of the SRI as follows. Length of service: if you have a 3-month service, 3 month service but not less than 4 months, you'll get 40%. 2 months but less than 3 months, you'll get 30%. And 1 month but less than 2 months, you'll get 20%. And less than 1 month, you'll get 10% of the SRI. And letter E, the employees have not received any additional year-end benefit in the fiscal year 2020 over and above the benefit authorized under Republic Act number 6686 as amended by RA number 8441. And Section 3, inclusion from the grant of the SRI. Those engaged without employer relationship and whose compensation are funded from non-personal service appropriation budgets are excluded from the grant of the SRI, such as A. Consultants and experts engaged for a limited period of performance-specific activities or services with expected outputs. B. Laborers engaged through job contracts or Pacquiao system and those paid on piecework basis. And letter C. Student workers and apprentices and individuals and groups of people whose services are engaged through job orders, contracts of service, or other similarly situated. Section 4. Funding resource of the SRI for employees in the Executive Department. The funding resource for the grant of the SRI to employees in the Executive Department shall be governed by the following. Letter A. For NGAs, including SUCs and military and uniformed personnel, the amount required shall be charged against the available release personal services allotments of the respective agencies under Republic Act number 11465 or the FY 2020 General Appropriations Act or GAA. Letter B. In case of deficiency, the amount required may be changed against or charged against the maintenance and other operating expenses allotment of the concerned government agency, subject to the rules and modifications of allotments under Section 70 of the General Provisions of the Fiscal Year 2020 GAA and other pertinent budgeting, accounting, and auditing rules and regulations. And letter C, for GOCCs, the amount required shall be charged against the respective approved corporate operating budgets for fiscal year 2020 only. And letter D, should the identified funding source prove insufficient to cover the full amount of the SRI, a lower but uniform amount shall be paid to all qualified employees of the NGA or GOCC. In Section 5, SRI for employees in the legislative and judicial departments and other offices vested with fiscal autonomy. Employees with this Employees in the Senate, House of Representatives, Judiciary, Office of the Ombudsman, and constitutional offices vested with fiscal autonomy may likewise be granted a one-time SRI by their respective heads of offices at a uniform rate not exceeding 10,000 pesos each, chargeable against the available released allotment of their respective agencies, subject to the conditions set in Section 2 hereof. Should the identified funding source prove insufficient to cover the full amount of the SRI, a lower but uniform amount shall be paid to all qualified employees of the concerned office. And Section 6 of the SRI for employees in local government units. Letter A. The grant of the one-time SRI to employees in LGUs, including those in the barangays, shall be determined by their respective sangguniang depending on the LGU's financial capability, subject to the PS limitation in LGU budgets under RA number 7160 or the Local Government Code of 1991 and the conditions set in Section 2 hereof at a uniform rate not exceeding 10,000 pesos, chargeable against their respective fiscal year 2020 local government funds. Should the identified funding source prove insufficient to cover the full amount of the SRI, a lower but uniform amount shall be paid to all qualified employees of the LGU. And letter P. In determining the amount of the SRI, the Sanggunians shall exercise prudence and judicious use of government funds, ensuring that the expenditure is reasonable and will not in any way adversely affect the delivery of services to the public. And Section 7, SRI for employees in local water districts or LWDs. LWDs may also grant the SRI to their employees at a uniform rate to be determined by their boards of directors, which shall not exceed 10,000 pesos each, chargeable against their respective BOD approved FY 2020 COBs only, subject to the conditions set in Section 2 hereof. Should the identified funding source prove insufficient to cover the full amount of the SRI, a lower but uniform amount shall be paid to all qualified employees of the LWD. And Section 8, SRI for employees in agencies exempted from the coverage of the RA number 6758 as amended, in GAs and GOCCs exempted from the coverage of RA number 6758 as amended may also grant the SRI to their employees at a uniform rate to be determined by their governing boards or agency heads, which shall not exceed 10,000 pesos each, chargeable against the NGA's available funds and the GOCC's FY 2020 COB budget to the conditions set in Section 2 hereof. Should the identified funding source prove insufficient to cover the full amount of the SRI, a lower but uniform amount shall be paid to all qualified employees of the concerned agency. And Section 9, Payment, date. Ayan, payment date na. The payment of the SRI to all qualified government employees shall not be earlier than December 21, 2020. So, not earlier than December 21. And Section 10, supplemental guidelines. As may be necessary, the DBM shall issue supplemental guidelines to effectively implement this order. And Section 11, separability clause. If any provision of the order is declared invalid or unconstitutional, the order provisions not affected thereby shall remain valid and subsisting. And Section 12, repealing clause. All issuances, orders, rules, and regulations, or parts thereof which are inconsistent with the provisions of this order are hereby repealed or modified accordingly. So, that's it. Section 13, Effectivity. This order shall take effect immediately following its complete publication in the official gazette or in newspaper or general circulation. Done in the city of Manila this 18th of December in the year of our Lord 2020 or 2020. Okay, that's it. So, it has been approved and the President has already authorized the grant of the SRI of 20 of for fiscal year 2020 to the amount of 10,000 pesos. All right, so that's it for today. Congratulations, everyone, and Merry Christmas. So, again, guys, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, do subscribe, do click that subscribe button, and do click that notification bell for you to keep updated the videos that I will be uploading. All right, guys, so that's it for today. Merry Christmas, everyone. Keep safe. Thank you for listening. Merry Christmas.